Out in the wild hills of Wyoming, past the sagebrush, up in the crags of the Wind River Range, there's a whisper on the wind. A story so old it predates the settlers, the states, and even the maps. It's a story of tiny people with sharp teeth, poison arrows, and a habit of crushing the skulls of their own wounded. Welcome to the story of the Nimerigar, Wyoming's flesh-eating, cave-dwelling little bastards. Now, before you think I've gone full History Channel alien mode, let's talk about the facts. The Nimerigar came from the oral traditions of the Shoshone tribe, an indigenous group native to Wyoming, Nevada, and Idaho. According to legends, the Nimerigar were a race of tiny humanoids, about 18 inches to 3 feet tall, and they lived in the mountains and the valleys of the region. But unlike the garden gnomes of European fairy tales, these little guys weren't harmless. They were warriors, poisoners, and sometimes cannibals. The Shoshone said these creatures would ambush travelers, using tiny bows with arrows tipped in poison. Then they would disappear into caves, and they would kill their own elderly by bashing them in the head with a rock. And it wasn't just the Shoshone either. Other tribes like the Crow, Ute, and Arapaho also had stories of little mountain people who lived underground or in hidden valleys. Some versions paint them as spiritual guardians, while others describe them as malicious creatures that would steal food, kidnap children, and curse the living. And let's be honest, if something 3 feet tall stole your child, you'd keep that to yourself. You wouldn't be out there telling the news or the police. You'd say it was a bear, or the government, or something. But maybe it was the Nimerigar, with their creepy little war dances and habit of stabbing people in the ankle. Alright, here's where things get weirdly physical. In 1932, a couple of gold prospectors dynamited open a cave in the Pedro Mountains of Wyoming. Inside, they allegedly found a tiny, mummified humanoid with a full set of human teeth. It was sitting cross-legged, and the body was about 14 inches tall, had leathery skin, and a face that looked like the love child of Benjamin Button and Yoda. They named it the Pedro Mountain Mummy, and it made rounds in sideshows and bars before being sent back to scientists. X-rays were taken, and some said it was a baby with birth defects, others insisted it had adult proportions and sharp fangs. And then poof, it disappeared. No one knows where the mummy is now, lost in a private collection somewhere, destroyed in a lab fire, or maybe it walked away on its own little feet while nobody was looking. One of the creepiest parts of the Nimerigar mythos is what they do to their own. When one of their tribe got sick or injured, they would kill them by bashing them in the head with a rock. They would do this in order to avoid slowing the group down, which is a pretty efficient form of healthcare.
Unplugging medieval life support is just bashing the rock.
Naturally, fringe theorists say they were survivors of a lost race, like the Denisovans, or some rogue clan of cryptid dwarves that have been hiding underground since the Ice Age. But whatever the case, the stories have not gone away. Even today, there are whispered sightings in remote canyons, and people still claim to hear the sound of tiny feet running through the brush, followed by the sting of something not quite natural. If encountered in the field, follow these tactical procedures. Their target profile. They're 18 to 36 inches. Behavior. They're aggressive, ambush-based, and they're nocturnal. Threat level. Medium-high, on account of the killing you in your sleep and using poison thing. These are the traps that you're going to want to set. Wherever you're camping, or even if you have a house out there, you're going to want ground nets or pitfall traps. You can disguise these with pine needles. Nimerigar have high ground speed, but poor vertical escapability. So dig a hole. They're going to fall into the hole, and then they can't get out, because they're little. If they fall in there by themselves, they will starve to death, and if they fall in there with other ones, they'll eat the other ones, and then they'll starve to death. You're also going to want to put up infrared perimeter alarms. This should help you detect motion at under 3 feet tall, which is really effective because the Nimerigar are under 3 feet tall. And then finally, dehydrated meat lures. You can lace them with agents like ketamine, Special K, or valerian root. My recommended firearms for these little guys are probably going to be like a 410 shotgun. Birdshot will probably do the trick. They're not, that big. I mean, they're vicious, but they're susceptible to, birdshot. They're not thick. Like, I can't imagine they got, thick bones. I didn't find anything about the thickness of Nimerigar bones on the internet, believe it or not, so this is what we're left with. If you're feeling kind of spicy, you can opt for a 20 gauge. I think 12 gauge is overkill. Regardless, shotgun's probably going to be ideal for short range defense against these things. It offers wide coverage in case there's a lot of them, and it's definitely got the firepower to do the trick. Next on the list, a 9mm, any semi-auto striker-fired pistol. I guess you could use a 1911 if you really wanted to, but it's just a basic sidearm. Like I said, they're not hard to kill, presumably. They're just little and fast. Take your regular sidearm. That's totally fine. Whatever you carry with you on the day-to-day. And then finally, for kind of like long-range stuff, if you want to attack this like some kind of hog hunt, just get yourself an AR and a thermal optic. Thermal scopes are going to work because at the beginning of this video, we talked about how they're nocturnal, so they come out at night. Thermal optics are going to help you find them at night. Treat it like a Texas hog hunt. And lastly, on the defensive capabilities, psychological warfare. The Nimerigar are repelled by bright lights, apparently. So that's pretty cool. They're like the Mogwai from Gremlins, or the Gremlins from Gremlins. And they don't like loud industrial noises. So if you live out on a farm or something, hop in a combine or a tractor, and they'll definitely probably leave you alone. If you're cornered, high-frequency feedback loops are effective ways at driving them out. I guess along with being like gremlins, they're also like the monsters from A Quiet Place in that they don't like that. So that I don't know how we figured this out either. The internet says 8,000 to 12,000 hertz to disorient and disperse these guys. I don't know how they figured that out, but I found it on the internet, and the internet can't be wrong. And then finally, fire. Fire is an effective deterrent for the Nimerigar, but it may attract others, so not really a deterrent. But if you light something on fire, it's probably going to die on account of it being on fire. In summary, these entities are not pets. They're not fairy tale creatures. They could be remnants of something we don't fully understand. If you're in Wyoming and you hear a rustle in the brush, draw fast, aim low, and don't hesitate. So, whether you believe the Nimerigar are lost tribes of angry forest gnomes or cryptid murder hobbits, just remember this. There's a reason that the mountains of Wyoming are quiet at night. And sometimes being small just makes you harder to catch. Thank you for watching Dead Range. We just went digging into one of America's most bizarre legends. So like, subscribe, and check your sleeping bag tonight.